Welcome back to the Battle of the Atlantic live from Los Angeles. Before we get to Game 2 between Gambit Gaming and XDG, I want to get the analyst take on Game 1. Xmitty talked about innovation from Gambit's side and throwing out that Amumu pick in support. That's got to be one of the biggest ones straight off the bat here. How do you think that worked out for them?
So I really liked Amumu because it worked for team fights really well, which I think you saw when it got to the team fight phase. Edward jumped in, man-moded, started some fights, and they did a really good job with those.
Yeah, the way I see it is Amumu is pretty much a better version of Annie if you can get to team fighting, but realistically, you're not supposed to get to team fighting. I think it was like disrespectful almost to pick Amumu and then go bot lane like they did because, I mean, XDG should have just went bottom and 2v2'd them. I think they went top to because they thought they were going to lane swap to try to 2v2 and they ended up guessing wrong. But if they had guessed correctly and they had 2v2'd against Amumu, I mean, he does absolutely nothing in lane. Like Bandage Toss, whatever, you go in and you die. And then Despair is useless, Tantrum's useless. I mean, they would have just gone dumpstered in lane, but you saw lane swap, and then later on they just played really passively because they're scared of Nocturne. Like Diamond farmed really well, and that puts a lot of pressure on bot lane because they don't want to play aggro and get knock ulted.
Yeah, and if we talk about that early game, you say that it's kind of disrespectful that they lane swapped. If we look at the mid lane, where it was a straight 1 versus 1 versus Mancloud and Alex each going up against each other, Mancloud did really good early game on Kha'Zix, but then he kind of dropped the ball somewhere in the mid game. How come he didn't make that transition very well?
Yeah, so when you kill your lane opponent, especially like that, super easy, like didn't build really any summoners or take a lot of damage, you're supposed to have like either a significant CS lead or take the tower or roam and make plays, like take it into red buff, like take the enemy blue, take dragon, do something to help your team out because obviously his bot lane was losing, his top lane's not doing so well, like Nasus is like just kind of down in CS the whole game, so he needs to make something happen with that 2-kill advantage, and he never did. He didn't take a tower, he didn't take dragon, he didn't help his team, so really those 2 kills were meaningless. It's just like 500 gold. That's all the advantage that they got from 2 kills, which should be way more than that.
Yeah. We talked also about that Nasus, who's supposed to scale very well going later, but he couldn't really do anything with that teleport he had.
Yeah, so there was an interesting sort of dynamic with the two team comps between these teams. So first of all, Gambit was very obviously want to 5v5 you, go in a big group, and just win by initiating with our faces, and they did that really well. Whereas XDG had this really other take on how to play the game. So they've got Burst from Annie, some pretty good upfront damage from Lucian, and then Kha'Zix to follow up on that, get some resets, and mop up a team fight, basically. Vi, again, to also initiate, kill a squishy, mop up the team fight, get Kha'Zix rolling. And as a backup lane, they've got Nasus to scale to infinity, as well as split push with teleport. So they've got the ability to, if they get a good team fight, make it happen, but also delay the game out until they find one of those fights. And as it turned out, Gambit was able to just force the 5v5s better. They didn't succumb to Benny split pushing, and because they've got 3 tanky guys, and then a Kayle ulti, there's no reset for Kha'Zix. And so there's, like, though I liked Vulcan's comp, it got completely outpicked by Gambit.
How do you think, what's the cause of that, as transitioning into mid-game, it seemed like Vulcan just, XDG just didn't know anymore how to team for, or even how to position themselves, especially if you know that you have something like a Bandage Toss just waiting in the wings.
Yeah, so I normally criticize Genja for his poor item choices, but this item choice he made where he bought BT into Giant Spell won his team the game, because Kayle is going to have an easier time ulting herself because it's a lot easier to watch your own HP than your teammates. As you saw, like Alex's ulti is sometimes a little late. So Kha'Zix is really only the realistic person on XDG who's going to carry. He's the only person who's ahead, and the only person he can reset on the whole team is Sivir because she's really squishy, she's 500 range, and everyone else is a tank. So he bought a Giant Spell, and he could never die after that. So that one is team the game. Honestly, it sealed it. Like, Kha'Zix can no longer reset on anybody, and that makes it so XDG, literally all of them are useless.
Yep. Something we saw yesterday, actually, as well. But then, talking maybe a little bit more about team fights, we have a replay that illustrates it perfectly, and to me, it really shows that Gambit would go for these objectives over and over, and they were like, well, if we get the objective, great, that's great for us. If we get the team fight, that's great for us as well.
Exactly. It's a really clever play by Gambit to focus on objective play. If we can get that replay up on your screen, guys, we'll show you exactly what we mean. So let's start where we are. Gambit are sitting here at Baron Pit, right? All 5 of them, they're grouped up, no split pushing. They want to force a 5v5, and they want to force the engage. Now, XDG are a little bit split up, but they're basically all sort of on the south side. They're ready to get into the fight, but Gambit will never split up at all. So let's roll the clip and watch the beginning initiation, right? They force the Kha'Zix back down to the left. Diamond engages in, the rest of the team follows with Sivir ulti. So they jump in, Bloodwater immediately dies. Let's pause right here, because here's the team fight Gambit wants. All 5 grouped up, the heavy burst already gone, Kayle ulti still available, and as you mentioned before with Kha'Zix, there's no really way in on this fight.
Yeah, they're just coming in from so many different directions. You saw Vi coming in from kind of the Wraiths. You saw Cloud coming in from behind. And if you come from 3 different directions, you want to collapse on them. You don't want to get collapsed on because you're so split up that you left your squishy backline. Bloodwater just died instantly, and there was no follow-up.
Yeah, so let's roll the rest of the clip out. You're going to see just the easy, basically wombo combo. Mancloud is trying to go in. Genja, all right, there's the KO. Oh, Genja can't really do much at this fight as they just keep walking forward, dealing the damage. And what I really liked as well was even though Shyvana isn't classified as having a whole bunch of crowd control in general, the just AoE knockback that she brings is actually kind of exactly what that team wants. Because they just kind of want to push it back, say, don't burst us, give us a little bit more time for Kayle and Sivir, give us some time to walk through you guys. And just like that knockback from Shyvana ulti, then just punch him with the face is good enough.
Yeah, that was kind of hilarious because she had a death cap and her ulti did like 200 or like 300 more damage than it should have. But yeah, his ultis were good. They're spot on the whole game.
Yeah, great stuff there from Gambit. Now that you've heard what we have to say, let's see how you answered our Twitter question of the day. Of course, earlier we asked you which LCS Pros plays has influenced your own game the most during the Battle of the Atlantic and why. And here's what you had to say. The first answer is from @Kamikaze Platypus, who says, Krepo has a huge impact on my support play by showing me how strong Leona really is and that she is more than a niche. And that is something he proved yesterday.
Yeah, so Krepo has always been known for his Leona play, and he's just pretty solid. One thing that Leona has an advantage of over other kind of supports like Annie is her ult range is a lot more unpredictable than Annie. Like, you can kind of respect an Annie's Flash Tibbers or like a Taric or an Alistar, but you can never really respect a Leona ulti 100% because at any time, because of its long range, it can catch you off guard. And if you get really good at landing it, which people have finally gotten to the point where they're so good at League that they can hit it with like 80% accuracy, it's just such a strong champion to pick. I don't think it's as good on purple side because going bottom lane on purple, you have a disadvantage inherently. But on blue side, you see a lot of Leona picks, and it's just working out recently like really well.
Yes, it has. And the second tweet is from @ArmanSword. He says, Alliance Shook taught me a lot about jungling Elise in the Season 4 meta. His pressure was ridiculously high for a newcomer.
And Shook is an incredibly skilled player. He had so much hype coming into the season, and he's shown it so far against Dignitas. Of course, we'll see him throughout the spring split as well. But yeah, these early game aggressive junglers like Elise are really doing well. I know I've seen comments from people saying, well, with the extra emphasis on maybe farming in the new season, maybe all the early pressure junglers aren't going to be very good anymore. Well, we see it's not really the case. The good Elise players have been separated from the great Elise players, and they're doing great.
Absolutely. The third and last tweet is from @PlaysGames. He says, Bjergsen, the Burger King has shown that you can make off-meta choices like LeBlanc and still succeed with great mechanics.
And I really like the LeBlanc pick. She's getting a little bit more play over time. I know Shifter plays her. I know Faker plays her once in a while as well into certain counter picks. And it's fun to see the champions that come out once in a while and make a bunch of plays. She's flashy as well. I'm just excited to see LeBlanc in play.
And DoubleLift, you're maybe going to have to play against that a lot of times in the NALCS.
Yeah, probably. I'm not really too scared, though. Like, there's always be players who play kind of off-meta champions, but play them really well at a high level. And I think, honestly, like the best, the most perfect player in the world, the closest I can think of is like Faker. He plays not only the meta champions, but he plays them perfectly. And there's always going to be some players like Bjergsen who play off-meta champions almost perfectly. And, you know, like, while they might not be the best pick, if they're really good at that champion, they can potentially carry the game.
Yeah. Well, keep those answers coming. And remember, we're at LOL Esports, and be sure to use the hashtag LCS. And now for the play.